In Afghanistan, a series of army convoys are traveling to assist those stranded on the road. One soldier steps out to vent his frustration, while another grows cinematic and starts a scuffle, but they are actually brothers. They reconcile, and the elder brother steps up to resolve the mechanical issue. During the pause, the brother raises the idea of joining the Ranger Assessment Selection Program, the most grueling of all military roles. The elder brother is hesitant because of the extreme difficulty, suggesting his brother go solo, but the younger man is hurt because they plan to finish it together. Moving to support him, the elder brother finally relents. Later, during their return journey, a sudden missile strike obliterates a convoy. They are ambushed instantly, and the entire unit is torn apart. The soldier eventually regains consciousness, finding himself completely isolated. He locates his brother, only to watch him slowly slip away and die. He suddenly wakes up on a bus. 2 years have passed since that tragic day. He swallows some antidepressants as the buses pull into the Ranger Assessment Center. To begin, the recruits are lined up, issued identification numbers, and given their initial tasks. Each platoon is assigned a leader to oversee the ranks. When the soldier arrives, records show he has been medically disqualified 4 times already. He is assigned number 81 and asked to take a leadership role, but he flatly refuses. Soon, the candidates gather as Sergeant Torres delivers a briefing on the selection process. It will be an 8-week training cycle that is designed to be nightmarishly difficult. If they manage to reach the final phase, they must endure a 24-hour simulation called the Death March, the most brutal selection program on Earth. If they succeed, they earn the title of Ranger. The grueling drills begin, and everyone pushes their limits. As the opening phase concludes, several candidates are cut. The second phase finishes with even more rejections. As the rounds continue, it becomes clear that 81 is physically superior to the others. During a lunch break, number 71 notices that 81 always eats in isolation. More drills follow, and the recruits are questioned about their previous assignments. When 81 reveals his history, the others stare in silence. Over lunch, the group gossips about him until number 44 shares his true backstory. Meanwhile, news reports announce that NASA has detected an asteroid cluster projected to pass near Earth. Eventually, even more soldiers are cut from the program. At lunch, the talk regarding 81 continues, revealing that he was actually awarded a Silver Star. He was the sole survivor of his unit and carried his dying brother 10 miles back to safety. Number 15 asks if the legend is true, but 7 intervenes. 15 claims he just wants to know if the man is truly a hero. That night, 7 observes 81 taking his medication. The next day, he attempts to make small talk with him. As the trials grow more intense, more soldiers drop out. 81 is still plagued by nightmares of his past trauma. During the final week, the task involves walking underwater across a pool while carrying heavy weights. Every other recruit fails, but 81 presses on by visualizing his brother. However, at the last second, his body gives out. He is pulled from the water, given CPR, and narrowly survives. A sergeant immediately labels him a tactical liability. 81 watches news updates explaining that the asteroids are not a single mass, but a cluster of interstellar objects. Soon, 81 is summoned by the sergeants. They inform him that he needs to resign from the program immediately. He attempts to fight the decision, but they silence him, explaining that while his physical strength is elite, his mental state is broken. He suffers from insomnia, refuses to bond with his unit, and avoids command. They admit they could discharge him, but they prefer he signs a voluntary resignation. However, 81 stands his ground, politely declining the resignation offer before walking away. The sergeants clearly plan to intervene. As the final round begins, the non-selected candidates are dismissed, but 81 remains in the ranks. The remaining recruits celebrate reaching the final mission. Sergeant Torres maps out the terrain for the exercise. The scenario involves a crashed pilot who must be escorted back to base while navigating massive obstacles. This time, command assigns 81 as the team leader. As the soldiers board the chopper, the sergeant believes that to truly be a ranger, 81 must prove he can lead. The helicopters take flight. They soar through a valley over dense jungle and touch down at the insertion point. The team takes a moment to center themselves before starting. They have exactly 24 hours to complete the objective. 81 attempts to give a motivational speech but falters, so 7 steps in to help inspire the group. They trek toward the crash site, traversing mountains and deep canyons as night falls. They wait for the simulated crash, which has yet to occur. 7 asks 81 to share something personal, but he shuts it down, insisting they only discuss the mission. Suddenly, something streaks across the sky at high speed. They assume the sergeants are just using advanced special effects. They press on until dawn breaks. Eventually, they reach the coordinates and find the crashed aircraft, though it looks far too high-tech for a standard drill. They prepare to set explosive charges to breach the hull and rescue the hostage. One soldier reports that his compass has failed, and 81 confirms the malfunction. 111 adds that their communications are completely dead. A strange, haunting, howling noise echoes around them. Believing it's all part of the training, the soldiers move in to set the explosives. Meanwhile, 81 spots something glowing ominously in the distance. He orders 44 to cover him while he investigates. 81 reaches a separate wreckage site and realizes this is their actual target. The charges detonate on the first craft, but to their horror, the ship remains perfectly intact without a single scratch. Suddenly, the craft begins to transform. It glows brightly and starts to hover. It is a massive robotic machine that immediately emits a blue scanning laser across the unit. The light turns a lethal red as it locks onto a soldier. It deploys a weapon and fires. The soldier is instantly vaporized, and the others are cut down as they try to flee. 7 manages to hide before bolting for cover. The machine targets 44, but 81 intercedes just in time to save them. They retreat into the jungle as the machine continues its relentless bombardment. They reach a steep pit and halt, but the machine launches an explosive. The blast sends them tumbling brutally through timber and jagged stones. One soldier is impaled by a sharp branch, and 7 suffers a horrific leg injury. 81 pulls himself up, and seeing the carnage, he is hit with violent flashbacks of Afghanistan. Despite his own broken fingers, he forces them back into place with a grimace. He rushes to a screaming soldier, silencing him to prevent the machine from pinpointing their location. Together, the survivors tend to the impaled soldier and manage to extract him from the wreckage. 81 then moves 7 to a secure corner. They realize their only hope is the radio 111 was carrying, and 81 sprints back to retrieve it. He reaches 111's body, only to find the communications gear completely smashed. The injured soldier's condition worsens as the others desperately try to stabilize him, but his wounds are too severe, and he passes away. 81 slides back down to the group, urgently declaring that they must evacuate the area immediately. The machine is actively hunting them. He anchors a rope and tosses it down into a nearby pit. The team readies their gear, descending one by one. 96 and 81 attempt to assist the injured 7, but 96 insists that 81 keep moving while he helps 7 slide down the rock face. As 7 slowly descends, 81 looks up and realizes the threat is right on top of them. The machine appears directly behind 96 and executes him in a massive blast. 7 hits the ground hard. It begins a systematic scan of the terrain below. The survivors press themselves against the canyon wall, trying to become invisible. The sensor sweep passes over them, but 15's trembling leg accidentally triggers a response. They bolt instantly as the machine opens fire with rapid precision rounds. Sprinting through the jungle, they face a barrage of specialized explosives launched by the hunter. They dodge the blasts as best they can, feeling the heat of the impacts at their heels. Once they put enough distance between themselves and the craft, the machine finally retracts its weapons. The soldiers eventually reach an open grassland and collapse from exhaustion. 81 immediately sets to work on 7's mangled leg. 81 calls for morphine, only to discover the vials were crushed during their fall. 7 tells him to proceed without the medicine. 81 then drops a bombshell. The high-tech craft wasn't their target. He saw the real wreckage, and it was nothing more than a vintage fighter jet. Their only choice now is to cross the remaining terrain and reach the official finish line where the extraction team is waiting. They strip away any non-essential gear and push forward. They hack through the dense jungle until they reach a river with a lethal, churning current. 81 secures the rope to himself and plunges into the water. 44 maintains his position on the bank, watching the water. For a terrifying moment, 81 vanishes beneath the surface. Finally, he emerges on the opposite bank, hauling himself up to tether the rope to a sturdy tree trunk. 15 begins the crossing first, with 7's stretcher tethered behind him. He inches across the rope, but the stretcher becomes snagged in a tangle. However, at that exact moment, the compass begins to spin wildly. The machine has arrived. It locks onto the soldiers holding the rope and obliterates them in a massive explosion. The entire team is thrown into the churning water. The machine descends into the riverbed and begins firing relentlessly at the survivors. He spots 7 floating downstream and swims with everything he has, finally catching hold of him. They are swept over the edge of the cliff, plummeting through the waterfall. Later, the other survivors manage to pull them both onto dry land. A soldier stationed at the finish line has found them and points the way toward the final checkpoint. 81 prepares to continue the journey just as the severed head of one of their comrades floats past. They keep walking and eventually reach the camp, but it has been completely decimated. They assume the machine caused the destruction. They see the radio tower has been toppled, explaining why their communications were severed. 81 scouts the ruins and realizes the machine crashed through the mountainside to get here. He connects the dots to the asteroid reports, realizing these things are definitely not from this planet. Suddenly, they find a sergeant, burnt beyond recognition, who dies moments later. 81 spots a disabled tank and decides they must repair it immediately. They have to get the tank operational to return to the starting point and warn the others. 81 assesses the stuck vehicle and tells them they must ignite the engine. It fails to start until 15, using his mechanical knowledge, dives in to fix the ignition. The engine roars to life. They tether the tank with a rope, and every survivor pulls with their remaining strength. Finally, the heavy machine is freed. 44 finds a stash of rations inside and distributes them to the starving team. As they load 7 into the hull, a flare ignites behind them. The compass begins to spin frantically. Another flare goes up. They realize the tank is out of ammunition, and 15 sprints back into the ruins to scavenge for shells. He runs back as the machine looms over them, but he is shot down before he can reach the hatch. 44 floors the accelerator, and the tank surges forward through a hail of explosions. The machine seems to slow down, but 81 realizes it is only pausing to launch a massive volley of explosives. Explosives rain down in front of the tank. The tank braves the firestorm, but the machine launches a final wave of 100 projectiles. The vehicle is flipped over and tumbles off the cliff. Eventually, they stabilize the vehicle, and the machine is nowhere to be seen. However, the hunter is hovering directly above them. This time, its facial plates shift open to reveal a core of intense blue light, which discharges a devastating high-energy laser beam. They lean out to open fire with small arms, even as one soldier's hand is severed in the crossfire. 81 launches a barrage of grenades at the Titan. The impact sets the machine ablaze. 81 calls out to 44 to turn the vehicle, only to realize the driver has been killed. The tank suddenly suffers a secondary explosion. 81 later regains consciousness, battered and bloody. He stands up to find that he is the only one left moving. His comrades are all gone. He climbs the rubble to locate the machine, finding only a severed mechanical hand sticking out from the rocks. He looks toward the horizon and spots the main body of the machine nearby, projecting a pillar of light into deep space. He then looks behind him and finds 7, discovering to his relief that he is still alive. The robot scans the remains of the tank and vaporizes the wreckage. 81 flees into the jungle, dragging 7 through the mud. It begins to pour rain, and in the slick terrain, 7 loses his footing. 81 struggles to keep moving, his strength finally failing. Overcome by frustration, he collapses in the mud, feeling like he has failed once again. 7 wakes up and reveals a secret. He knew who 81 was all along. He had been a friend of 81's brother, who spoke of nothing but becoming a ranger alongside his older sibling. He feels he let everyone down, but 7 reminds him that as long as he hasn't given up, he hasn't failed. Suddenly, they see the machine's searchlight scanning the trees above them. 81 searches for a weakness and notices a constant plume of smoke venting from the machine's head. He realizes this is a vital cooling system. Spotting an old industrial quarry nearby, he quickly formulates a final plan. He hides 7 by a tree and instructs him to wait. 81 then infiltrates the factory, reaching the engine room and cutting on the power. He scavenges some dynamite and a flare gun before locating the main controls to ignite the floodlights. He discovers a remote that operates the overhead rock hoppers. 7, still lying by the tree, hears the machine approaching his position. He braces for the end, but 81 fires a flare into the air, successfully drawing the machine's attention toward the factory. The machine stalks into the facility, its vents working overtime. It scans the floor, unaware that 81 has rigged the ground beneath it with explosives. The charges detonate, sending the machine crashing down. 81 suddenly bursts out of a garage operating a heavy bulldozer. The bulldozer pins the machine against a reinforced wall. 81 triggers the remote, and a torrent of heavy rocks buries the machine's head. As it creates space, the machine opens its face to charge its laser, but 81 slams the accelerator and rams it back into the wall. The falling rocks continue to clog the cooling vents. The bulldozer begins to smoke and fail under the extreme pressure of the struggle. With the vents completely blocked, the machine begins to overheat internally. The tower collapses onto the bulldozer, but 81 leaps clear just in time. The machine reaches critical temperature and finally vanishes in a massive, blinding explosion. The massive machine finally slumps over, dead. However, its collapse triggers a secondary chain reaction, sending more explosives tumbling into the inferno. 81 sprints with everything he has left, scrambling over the jagged rocks and leaping clear just as the entire facility vanishes in a colossal fireball. Later in the story, 81 manages to commandeer a surviving bulldozer to transport 7 back to the main base. Upon arrival, medics immediately rush 7 away for emergency treatment. 81 looks around to see the entire military installation in a state of absolute chaos. He is met by Sergeant Sheridan, who reveals the horrifying truth. Those machines are appearing everywhere. News reports confirm that these mechanical hunters have spread across the entire planet, and tragically, even more are currently entering the atmosphere. Sheridan approaches 81, noting that these machines are nearly impossible to kill, and asks how he managed to take one down single-handedly. 81 explains the tactical vulnerability. They must force the cooling vents closed, and the machine will essentially choke itself out. The sergeant then officially presents him with the Ranger tab, telling him that he is ready now. As the soldiers gather for deployment, 81 delivers a powerful speech about his solo kill to motivate the troops. Together, they head to the waiting choppers, prepared to fight in an unwanted war for the survival of humanity. The story comes to an end. That's all for this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you can be notified when we upload a new video. Thanks for watching.